are very blessed. You have a yard. I live about 25 minutes from Washington, D.C. I can literally touch my neighbor's house. So, you know, there's not a lot, there may not be a lot of room to maneuver, so you guys are very lucky in that aspect. You also need to make arrangements for your pets, immunizations, pet food. Make sure you check the cans and check for the expiration dates so you can swap them as time goes on while you make your disaster kits. Now, there should be at least 1 gallon a day per person for 3 to 7 days, or for an average of 5 days. You should also have food for at least, for one person, at least for 5 days, an average of 5 days. Make sure they're canned goods. Make sure you have foods for infants and the elderly, snacks, non-electric can opener, paper plates, plastic utensils, and a little bit of clothing to make sure everybody stays warm. Now, prescription drugs. I know most of us, we take prescription drugs, but who thinks about making sure you have some spare prescription drugs in your disaster kit? Now, this is how we want you guys to take it. If you happen to take prescription drugs, for example, very critical drugs like nitroglycerin or asthma medications or inhalers that you get refills for 3 months, you can always swap. When you refill your prescriptions, make sure that you have at least 2 weeks to a month supply of your current one in your disaster kit. And another thing that's important is a list of your medications. If you don't have all the medicines in your disaster kit, whenever you have your physicals, make sure that you get the most current copy of your doctor's report and keep that in your disaster kits as well. Again, special items for babies, pets, and the elderly, toiletries, flashlights, very important. Make sure they're working. Batteries, make sure they're working. Battery-operated radio, telephones. Now, this is what I was talking about. Some small bills with your disaster kits. I'm not sure if the banks are going to be working, so we don't really want to advocate the credit cards on the 18 months. Just, we'd rather have cash in your disaster kits. And also, if you live on a 2 or 3 level home, personally, I have my main disaster kit in my garage, as well as a mini one in my basement. It may not have all the supplies, but you never know when you may not be able to get to the main disaster kit. So make sure you have a little mini one as well. Keys. Important documents, like I said, medical records, bank account numbers, tools, social security cards, pet care items, all those things are important to have in your disaster kit. Now, after this short discussion, if you're prepared, yes. If you're not, we hope that you can take the time to prepare on a personal level so you can help your community in case a disaster happens. Okay, at this point I'm going to hand it over to Melanie, but if you take nothing away from this, we hope we have made an impact on your disaster preparedness level, on a personal level, because if we're not prepared on a personal level, obviously we cannot help the community if it's needed. So I want to thank you for your time, and I'll hand it over to Melanie.
I'm going to talk about how our church can be prepared. What we can do is we can contact the Winchester and Frederick County chapter of the Red Cross and tell them that we would like to provide our building as an emergency shelter for victims or volunteers during a disaster relief operation. We would sign an agreement with the Red Cross and they would provide training for us so that we could serve as an emergency shelter. Then if a disaster strikes, we could utilize our talents to minister to our community. If you don't have this set up ahead of time and you go to them in the moment, they're going to say, no, we don't have time to deal with you right now. So you have to do it proactively. We need to organize a church disaster relief committee headed by a disaster relief director who will run the program and lead the committee. We would administer a survey so we can identify members' special talents and find out if they're willing to come in and help during a disaster. We would hold special training sessions for the members who want to be committee members, and the committee would ensure that the grounds and required equipment are available if disaster would strike. With regards to the community, We would work with local agencies, most specifically the Red Cross. We would need to have a list of community civic leaders to call on in a disaster who would be apt to be leaders in the community. And we would need to communicate what we're doing within our church family, but also to the community so that everybody knows what everybody's doing. The important role in this disaster relief committee is the director, who's responsible for assembling the disaster response team, planning and preparation activities, trainings, enlisting a church resources coordinator and a church volunteer coordinator that we'll talk about in just a minute, and then collaborating with the local disaster response organizations. They need to know who the point person is in our church. And then when disaster strikes, this person would alert the team and direct the response. So, the church resource director then is the person who's going to inventory the facilities, equipment, and supplies that might be used during a disaster. Work with the committee to determine recommendations for how to use these assets during a disaster, and enlist volunteers to assist with utilization of the facilities, equipment, and supplies during a disaster response. The church volunteer director will be responsible for administering the congregational skills and talent survey that we talked about before. And that's something that we have for you. This resource manual is for the church building here, and that survey is in here. This person would train and organize the volunteers, establish a volunteer telephone chain, and then direct the volunteers during a disaster response. The church could assist with any phase of a disaster, with warning, rescue, or evacuation. We could provide our building, provide volunteers, and provide